Thank you. The story is pretty simple. I run a school that I built in the neighborhood where I was born and where I will die. I've cast my fate in 6 city blocks in a neighborhood. And it's here as the result of a public school teacher that actually saved my life. I was walking down the corridor of my high school and minding my own business, and the art room door was open, and this fellow was sitting at a potter's wheel. He made this great big old bowl, and I was transfixed by the image of this bowl, so I was standing there with my mouth open, and he said, "Can I help you?" I says, "Yeah, what is that, man?" He said, "Oh, that's ceramics." I says, "I want you to teach me how to do that." He says, "Well, get your homeroom teacher to sign a piece of paper that says you can come here and you're good to go." So for the remaining 2 years of high school, I cut all my classes. And I went to the art room, but I had enough street sense to give the teachers whose classes I was cutting the pottery I made. And they gave me passing grades, and that's how I got out of the place. But more importantly, Mr. Ross says, "You're too smart to die. I'm not going to let you die like your buddies on the street. You're going to college, man." And so Mr. Ross hounded me during my senior year, and I filled out a college application to a place called the University of Pittsburgh in pencil, thinking that'd be the end of it. And I put this thing in an envelope, and they sent me this test called the Scholastic Aptitude Test, which I'd never seen before. Back then, it was multiple choice. I kind of marked the thing up. And I got in as a probationary student. Well, the better news is I graduated from the place with honors, and now I'm a trustee of the University of Pittsburgh. And I received a PhD from the place, and I was the commencement speaker. And I got up and said, "Don't give up on the poor kids. They might end up being the commencement speaker." It's not where you start, it's where you end up that matters. And for the next couple of minutes, I'm going to tell you this story, which is turning out to be a pretty interesting story. Bidwell Training Center is this vocational school, and I took it over in the 70s. I was minding my own business, running my little art program, Manchester Craftsmen Guild, and the guys who built Bidwell screwed it up pretty good, and they were looking for some fool to take it over. And they said, "Well, there's that Bill Strickland. He thinks he's Moses. He'd probably take the job." And back then, I actually did think I was Moses, could lead all the poor to the promised land and all that. So I took over Bidwell in 1972 in a warehouse with no windows and holes in the floor, holes in the roof. And the guys were on their knees gambling when I showed up with a Brooks Brothers suit on. And I asked the secretary, I said, "I got here today, what were the guys gambling about?" She said, "Oh, they were taking bets on how long you'd last in the job." That was the student body. So I said, "Okay, man, I ain't leaving." So I bought the beer and I bought the paint. And I said, "Anybody doesn't show up to paint this building is fired." One guy didn't show up and I fired him. I said, "We're not a poverty program, we're a world-class training center, and this paintbrush is going to demonstrate my commitment to that principle." That's important for you to understand to see what I did with it. The arts program is Manchester Craftsmen Guild. I started in a row house, dragging kids off the street to save the souls with clay. I'm still doing it on a much bigger scale. I also built that. This is our school. This is my concept of how to build a school for people that have no hope. The worst part about being poor is what it does to your spirit, man. It's not just an economic condition, it's a spiritual condition. And so what I figured out is that we got to get people out of the dark and put them in the light, because the light's for everybody on the planet, not just rich kids. And so Mr. Ross took a bunch of us kids to see a very famous house called Falling Water. So here's this Italian guy with these black kids in his van. You get out through the woods, and you come out into this clearing, and I saw this house with a creek running right down to the middle of the house. And I said, "Man, in my neighborhood, we spend time trying to keep the water out of the house. This guy's got a creek running right down to the middle of the place. That's an interesting way of looking at water. So I committed myself to building a center that had water, because water is life. And if the museum's got a fountain, I think the kids deserve a fountain. And that's why I put it in my school. The other thing when you come to visit is you'll see a world-class culinary program set up by a guy named John Hines, who did okay in the ketchup business. And he came by to see me courtesy of a man named Leroy Irvis. And Senator Hines walked in and said, "Man, I've been hearing about this Bidwell program, and what an extraordinary story you got. And I was wondering if you could start training some black folks for the culinary industry." Well, back then, Bidwell was a building trades program. And I said, "Senator, I'm reluctant to go into a field I don't know anything about, but man, give me the money, I'll build this program, and then we'll get back to that culinary thing maybe in a couple of years." And he said, "Well, what would your answer be if I give you $1 million?" I said, "Senator, it appears we're going into the food training business." And John did give me $1 million, but as importantly, he loaned me the head of research for the Heinz Ketchup Company. And we built a world-class culinary program 10 minutes from where you guys are sitting tonight. And these are some of the students, and we built an amphitheater, and that's lunch at the school. Why? Because it's tough to teach people when they're hungry. So the answer is to give them something to eat. And I can improve the literacy rate in Pittsburgh by 2 grades. You know how I'll do it? Giving the kids something decent to eat. Because if they're hungry, they're not learning. That's lunch at our school. That's lunch at our school. So anybody that tells you you can't serve world-class food to poor kids, you send them to Pittsburgh, man. I've been doing it for 25 years. You just have to want to do it bad enough. We even got the black people and the white people eating together voluntarily without a civil rights speech. What we discovered is world-class environments create world-class behavior. You treat people like people, they tend to treat each other like that. And I didn't study this in the sociology course. I'm telling you what I see with my own eyes every day. We also train pharmaceutical technicians for the pharmacy industry. You come over to my center, and I've got people with no background in science doing pharmaceutical applications in 12 months, and they're going to work for all the healthcare systems, and they're doing fine. This fellow is now working for the Water Treatment Authority. He was down to his last unemployment check, and now he's making about $50,000 a year. He's got a job. His kids are doing fine, and we solved the problem. So what we've been able to demonstrate is that we can take people regardless of their economic environment, and I can have them doing world-class technology in 12 months in a tough inner-city neighborhood with a high crime rate. We also have people in this library who can't read the diplomas they've been given. Not mine, ones that have been given in other educational institutions. And I'm telling you, we're going to lose this country if we got guys walking the street with diplomas in their pocket that they can't read. They read mine or I won't sign it. So we got that problem figured out. This is the arts program. Remember, I'm the black guy from the 60s making pottery? How many of you even around in the 60s, raise your hand? One time I did the speech, nobody raised their hand. So I got to check out who I'm talking to, the jokes don't work. Well, I was around during the disturbances. Back then, they were what we called them what they were riots, and guys were getting shot, so I set up this little tent ministry to save souls with clay. And it's worked out pretty good. It's one of our guys. His brother's already at Penn State. He's going there. Oh, by the way, these are kids who have no artistic ability. Well, 90% of them graduated from our program, and 90% of them went to college within 36 months of enrollment in an inner-city arts program in a black neighborhood. We've doubled the effective graduation rate for minority kids in 36 months, and we do not teach the academics. You know what we teach? Life. Life and hope are married. at our center. This is all kids' work. I've had kids get 4-year scholarships right out of the center, man. Look at this kid's eyes. This is a kid who supposedly has no hope. Why does he show up for an after-school arts program in a tough inner-city neighborhood? Why? Because he's taken control of his life. Look at his eyes. That's a kid that's engaged in technology big time. So the kid who took that picture is now working for Walt Disney Studios. The fellow on the left is one of my students I had in 7th grade. He's now the director of the program. And this is actually an old slide. Before I got real fancy with my little PowerPoint, I actually had slides. You remember them? Well, I actually had one, and it was in a carousel with duct tape on the corner. And I got called out to a place called the Silicon Valley. So I showed up with my slide projector, and these people looked at me like I was from Pluto, man. But that's cool. I blew off the dust, gave him a little talk. And this kid come out of the audience. He said, man, that was a heck of a talk. He had tennis shoes and blue jeans. I said, what do you do for a living? He said, oh, I built a company called eBay. I said, oh, that's cool. You got a card? I ain't the techie guy. So I took the kid's card and I went back to Pittsburgh and asked one of the little techie kids, I said, you ever heard of something called eBay? He said, yeah, that's the electronic commerce network. I said, holy smokes, I met the guy that built the company. So I called him up. I said, Mr. Skull, I've come to have a much deeper appreciation of who you are, man. He said, I thought you'd figure it out. Here's $1 million. Why? Jeff Skull, 25 years ago, said, I think you can scale this globally. And as you're going to see in a couple of slides, I think he was right. Oh, that's our digital imaging center for inner city kids who supposedly can't learn technology. Well, what's that? If they can't learn technology, what are they sitting at the machines doing? Oh, we also built a music hall. A trumpet player named Dizzy Gillespie showed up. And I said, why'd you come here? He said, a fellow named Herbie Hancock said a black guy built this thing, and I didn't believe him. And so Dizzy and I stood right on that stage. And these are, by the way, these are kids from the school system. Look at their faces, man. These are children who are engaged in life for a change. And what we've discovered is if you build schools where kids are smiling when they walk in the door, they'll probably leave the same way. There's Dizzy, just in case you thought I was lying. He was there. Oh, we also won 7 Grammys. Y'all heard of the Grammys? Well, we won 7 of them. And we have the highest win rate of any small record company in the world on the north side of Pittsburgh in a tough neighborhood. Don't tell me what's possible, man. I'm telling you what's possible in these slides. That was on opening night. If you'd have dropped a bomb in that room, you'd have wiped out all the rich people in Pennsylvania. Because they're all sitting there, man, including my mother and father who are in the left-hand row. And they're both gone now, but they lived long enough to see their kid open up the center black tie. And it worked out all right. The next night I had the neighborhood come in, and I had the same food both nights. Why? Because I wanted to establish the principle that you don't have to have a tuxedo to be treated like a world-class citizen. We also grow orchids on the north side of Pittsburgh. In fact, we took first place in the Home and Garden Show. Our guys. Now, this is where the story takes an interesting turn. You remember Mr. Skull when he said, I think you can scale this idea? Well, guess what? These centers are now open and operating. I've got 9 of them open and operating. And we just opened up Israel. I have Jews and Arabs going to school together today, man. That's Mr. Skull on the right, Billy Wong and the kids in San Francisco. This is the one we opened up in Grand Rapids. These are the photographs of Dr. King taken during the last 2 years of his life, and we wanted the children to know who he was. This is the one we opened up in Cleveland. We're training medical technicians. This is the one we opened up in New Haven. Oh, by the way, every center is beautiful. I will not build it. No used equipment. Everything's got to be first class because I'm in the business of curing cancer of the human spirit. And what I'm showing you is the cure for cancer of the human spirit. It's called sunlight and good food and hope. And you put that together, you can solve this problem. This is the one we opened up in New England. This is the one we opened up in a place called Brockway, Pennsylvania. Y'all know where Brockway is? Okay, well, I didn't. But a Republican legislator came to see my center and says, I want to see what everybody's talking about with this Bidwell program. So I went up to Brockway, Pennsylvania, and it's a tough neighborhood, 8,000 people that's been given up on for dead. And we opened it up. And now we got Israel open in that place. And that fellow's name is Sharon Perez. He was my friend, and unfortunately God took him before I had a chance to open up the center because he had planned to come to the opening. And you know what Shimon Perez told me? Keep going. You're on it, man. Just keep going. Oh, these are the first class. Jewish guys on the left, Arab guys on the right. Do they look like they hate each other? Right? Hello? It's called common sense, which is very short supply in our country right now. And I'm telling you, we better solve this, man. Now, I got to keep doing my time check here. How we doing? 5. Cool. Chicago, Denver, Sharon, Vancouver, Erie, Pennsylvania is now signed up. Tacoma, U.S. Virgin Islands, Dallas, Los Angeles, Laurel Valley. And these are the cities that we're working on building. And Nassau and London. We just signed up Nassau yesterday. And let me tie this up for you. I agreed to do this because of Chris and his brilliant team. 2, I'm in a hurry. My mother implanted a gene at the base of my brainstem that prevents me from blocking out images of human suffering. And so at 3 o'clock in the morning when I'm wide awake and I see the kids in Africa with flies in their mouth, I can't get back to sleep. This has got to stop. And don't tell me there aren't answers because I just showed it to you. If I could pull off a center for Jews and Arabs in Israel from a center on the toughest neighborhood in Pittsburgh, don't tell me what's possible, man. Number 2, in my remaining 3 minutes, I've met a fellow named the Dalai Lama. Nice guy. I had a bowl of soup with the guy in Wadzel, Austria. And so I'm eating a bowl of broth with this man, and I said, what keeps you going, man? The Chinese are trying to kill you. You don't even have a country. And he said, it's here, Bill. It's inside of you, man. The answer's in you. And so his physician came to Pittsburgh to see my center because His Holiness apparently had told him about the work I was doing. And he said, this is the center that His Holiness has wanted to build, only you did it. Now, if I can get him to come to Pittsburgh, would you agree to help build a center with the Dalai Lama? And I said, yes, sir. Sign me up. And I think we got an outside shot. My chairman's here someplace, Scott Lammy. We are talking to His Holiness's people right now. And we pulled it off, and Barry said, "Why did you do this?" I said, "Because His Holiness said it's in the inside." Figured out that light was the cure for cancer of the human spirit. He said, "You've done it, He knows it, but you built the center. Wouldn't it be an honor if the Dalai Lama and Bill Strickland were able to pull this together and actually build this thing?" I think we're odds-on favorites to do that. And then finally, a big consultant firm came to Pittsburgh to work with us and said, the issue's not 100 cities, which we plan to build, by the way. He said the issue's going to be 5,000 cities. And so we're odds-on favorites. We already signed up to 100. That's done. It's the 5,000 I'm after. And here's what I want to leave you for a lesson. We can't live like this anymore. We got to stop the suffering, man. And we have to do it together. And I will not be able to sleep soundly unless I know that we have made every effort to do this right. When I go to Washington, D.C., there's one grave I always go to see, Bobby Kennedy. And you know why? Because you have to search for the grave. Because there's a little cross about that big. In a former life, I used to fly airplanes for a living. So I flew 727s. And in the simulator, there are only two grades, S and U. All I want is an S for doing my job. And I would like to be able to enhance that S with the energy that is in this room right now. And thank you for listening to what I had to say tonight. Thank you.
Wow.